study, and I also wanted to thank Andy Wilson. I think Andrew is a little bit humble sometimes in terms of what Beth Page has done for the state of New York with the nature parks, and him and his wife. I know Delphine was very involved. Priscilla's been very involved with some of the things that Beth Page State Park does outside of just golf. In New York State, I think it has become, Andy and Cornell were ahead of their times. We just started, I was a Cornell University grad too, and so I always question the science from a legislative standpoint, and I look for data analytics. And so, Andy, to sum it up, they've done a great job promoting what they do outside of the golf course for the environment and the green space the golf courses can provide for kids, field trips. I applied some of that stuff at my golf course when I was at North Hempstead Country Club, and we host local field trips, and it was a really good thing that we did, and Andy, thank you for doing that. I think that's overshadowed in the glamour of Beth Page, Black, and all the events and that sort of stuff. Okay, we'll go right into it. My name is Tom Kaplun. I'm the golf and grounds superintendent at Huntington Country Club. I'm a month and a half in there. I was a superintendent at North Hempstead Country Club for 17 years. After graduating from Cornell University, assistant program down here, I was part of Links. I was at a public course for a year, went over to a private course, and but the public course really taught me, how to hustle, how to multitask, and it exposed me early to one of the most important things I think on public courses, and it's how to maximize rounds and how to make money. And I think that's an important thing that all golf course owners and anybody involved, whether it's municipality, towns, okay, or publicly owned courses that are sole ownership groups, they want to get a great experience, but they want golfers to play, they want to maximize their tee times, and so I think that's important to note. I just got involved in government advocacy. Yeah, when I went to Cornell really taught me how to question the science and to look for science and to question things if it wasn't science and to interpret data. And I like that, and I apply that in my job very much as a superintendent. You can be carried away with it. There's still a field that goes into it. You don't have to be a good golfer to be a great superintendent. You have to know what a good golfer wants, and you got to get out there and you got to do it. And that's an important aspect of being a superintendent. So I got involved with this. I started at the local level, like Andy said. I never aspired to do anything outside of New York State. I grew up in upstate New York, and I went to Cornell, and I'm down here, and I thought I was going to be down here for 5 years. I've been down here for 22 years. So that's how it was. So anyway, I was passionate about politics, and I did not like the fact that I started to see on Long Island that they were putting out legislation that was not true to science, and they were trying to come after us for things that were not correct. And so I started working early on. When I was younger, in 2015, I started getting involved, maybe before that, and worked on Long Island, and then worked my way up to the state level. And really how this all began with the, well, we have a vision out here. Okay, we're going over the vision, sorry. But really how it started was, we were going to Albany. I'm the president of the New York State Turfgrass Association, right? And a lot of legislation in New York State you do not see is actually legislation as it relates to the environment. And it should be important to you because what happens is the environmental legislation that gets passed, okay, often requires more money to do our jobs. And that more money to do our jobs affects the amount of money we make, and it also affects the amount of money that the operation takes in. Okay, and so I really got upset after 2019, we had a neonate bill that passed. Okay, and it was over chemical for drugs. And there's a lot of debate about whether the chemical does harm, doesn't harm. Okay, Cornell came out with a very controversial study. It was very biased. This is the university I went to. I didn't like the study. I testified in front of Albany, and it passed. And it passed for golf because if we get lumped in, you gotta understand something. Golf in New York State, okay, is lumped in with homeowners and landscapers. And that's a tremendous injustice to what we do. And that's why when we went up to Albany, we used to call it Turfgrass Lobby Day, okay? But we changed the name to Turfgrass Advocacy Day, okay? And I realize I'm not going to criticize it. Okay, so, sorry, I'm superintendent, so I'm not really good at this stuff. So. But anyway, okay. So this is the agenda right here. Okay, it is I just want to go through this. It'll be quick. And save with my time limit. Okay, so we came up with a study. There's two superintendents, myself, Bob Nielsen from Bedford Golf Country Club. We went to GCSAA and we said, look, our stats are from 2008. Okay, we're going up to Albany and we're telling people a story. And the more you go up to Albany, the feel good is good, but the feel good isn't enough. They want to know how many jobs, how much money, it's all numbers. And we're using numbers from 2008, and that's not cutting. So we went to GCSAA America, we said, how can we do better? And GCSAA gave us some guidance. They told us some states that had done some recent impact studies. So, I looked around, I looked at Arizona, California, and then Colorado, and I realized Colorado has a lot of the same similarities as us in terms of protecting nature and also protecting water and water quality. And water quality in New York State is huge. Okay, they have this Community Climate Protection Act right now. Okay, if you want to go online, you can look it up. It was a government thing. If you go on there and you think community climate protection, you would think that you would see pictures of green space, Central Park, and there's nothing. There's pictures of the Adirondacks and streams and water, and there's no picture of any green space in the sea. Like, there's a lot of green space that's turf grass in New York State. And so a lot of legislators around 5 boroughs are not very friendly towards golf. Some of you have found out and will come to continue to find out. So this inspired us to do the study. We got the Brady Sports Management Group because we felt that they were the best when it came to sustainability efforts. Gina Rizzi, the president of the company, she had worked at high-level sustainability with in the automotive industry. And so, we really wanted to use an expert, when it came to sustainability. And she was also very good with economics. So that's how the partnership began. And then we started small, and we grew to 16 associations around the state. And this is how we formed the alliance that then funded the study and ran the study. So I think it was maybe about $130,000, $140,000 study, somewhere around there, all said and done. Again here, see, stop there. Okay, good. All right, real quick, the New York State Turfgrass Association. Okay, most people don't know about it. We do a lot of work behind the scenes. Education thing. Okay, advocacy is probably the best thing that we do. Okay, we go to Albany, we advocate for the whole turfgrass industry. The problem that I have with it, even as a president, is that I run a golf course. Okay, and so I like turfgrass, but I really like golf. And so I'm more concerned. I'm concerned with both. But I really like golf because I work in golf course. And so what happens there ultimately affects my paycheck. And just like it affects the cost of the ground golf. I mean, we're quick in New York State to advertise how affordable golf is, right? And what we have to realize is that the legislation that they're trying to push through is only going to make it more expensive. And I think that's the key talking point that's lost in this. The Turfgrass Association, we have a Turfgrass Environmental Stewardship Fund. We go to Albany, we ask Albany for money, right? We turn around and we fund projects. We funded a quarter of the study of the golf impact study. We do things. We developed an apprentice program. And I want to play this video because I think it's important for the owners in here and anybody really that's in golf to understand that you have talent on your staff. It's very tough to find assistants, good quality staff right? I think that's been an issue for quite some time. So we developed an apprentice program, and the apprentice program allows you to be able to take staff members that you might have that might show an interest in upper level, turf and managing the golf course. You can put them through a program with SUNY Delhi, they can continue to work, they can make money, you get a New York State tax credit on the labor, and they come out with 19 college credits, and they come out with an apprentice certificate that gets them into higher level education. So, like I have one kid at North Hempstead that did it, I have 2 guys over at Huntington Country Club that are doing it, and the best part about it is, you have somebody that's 20, 21 years old, you're not having to pay them what an assistant makes right now, which is upwards of $100,000 to $150,000. And you can grow them in the green, and you can teach them the right way, which I don't know if my way is the right way, but I like my way. I like other people's way, I like other people too. Can we play the apprentice video real quick?
You're learning in real time. You still have to sit and you have to read your books and go through your presentations and write your papers, and the work is still there, but again, this is the class. The classroom is the golf course.
As they got involved with the education and understand the why of what they were doing, I think that even accelerated their passion more that this is really what I want to do.
I learned a ton from Tom and Kevin, everyone I work with, and through this apprenticeship program, kind of getting some on-the-books learning, some of the science behind it, some of the stuff that I actually really need to know.
And I'm a hands-on person, so I learn better when I'm hands-on working and everything. It's a great feeling. being able to learn, physically doing stuff rather than just typing it on a computer and reading it.
And I think the employers are now maybe rethinking about what today's assistant is and turf professional is because of this apprenticeship platform. I kind of look at it from a 10,000 foot view level in that it's teaching the employer how to train and develop. They've never really had a formalized training program. You know, again, very foundational from your learning how to operate equipment, your basic skills, all the way up to now spraying, watering, fixing irrigation heads, being a part of senior staff meetings. I mean, I've heard that from a number of the apprentices. Just being in the room, maybe they're not actively participating and sharing ideas, but they're in there and they're learning as part of the management team because it's a profession, not just a job.
It's have an overall better grasp of everything that comes with golf course management, as well as leading a crew. Someone being as young as I am, 25, can have a hard time telling somebody who's maybe 20 years older than what to do, but with experience, you get more and more comfortable kind of delegating work as well.
You're not going to be the best at any single task, but you need to be proficient in all of them. Understand how long they take, understand how many people need to be on that job.
As you know, like, I'm super passionate about trying to recruit people into this profession, and to see the association jump behind it and support it, it's sort of a legacy thing for me.
Great. All right. And so the importance of that is you realize that when people come to work on a golf course, people come to work on any type of job, they want to know what the upward mobility of the job is, right? They want to know how much money they can make and then where they can move within the company. And so that's important for employers to let employees know. And so that's worked well. I have two guys in that video are guys that they work for me. One from North Hempstead. Actually, I go back to Virginia, a tragedy in his family. Great kid. 4-year degree from JMU, right? Sports management. Didn't know what he wanted to do during COVID. He went to work on a golf course. All of a sudden, he wanted to be an assistant. Comes to work for me. Great attitude. Knows nothing about science. Just needs that next step, right? You have to know a little bit about science to work on golf course, to be a superintendent. I mean, we are dealing with living things. Same thing with the other parents I have. 4-year degree. I think he wanted to be he wanted to go into radiology. Then he started working on the golf course. He loved it. These are programs that pay catalysts. Same thing with guys that I have a guy right now who has graduated. He wants to do it next year, but I'm like, okay, we can't afford this. But the program's paid for by New York City. Okay, funded through Kathy Hoppel's workforce to drive. And so it's a great thing. You have people on your golf course, and you think that they have talent and can do it. Go on our website, and you can figure out how. And anyway, that's a full scope thing. Let's see here. Every day. Okay, we do a day every year. Okay, up in Albany, we go out, we meet with legislators, we talk, we change this narrative. Right? It used to be called Turfgrass Lobby. I did not like the name lobby. Lobby sounded bad. We changed it to advocacy. We go out, we advocate for our industry. We advocate for turf, we advocate for golf. We're not going to go in the legislator's office that wants to take 4 golf courses in New York City and make them into urban housing. We're not going to go in and find any common ground with them fighting the bill that they signed or that they have on the slate. But we are going to go in that office and we are going to find common ground that we can talk to them about the value of green space in the community for the kids to come out of school every day. And so that's what we try to do. And that's important, and that's why the study is important. From an environmental standpoint as much as economic. We did a launch of this. We sponsored a launch of this. Sorry, I had the Ryder Cup. That was a great event. Thank you, Jeff Voorhees. Thank you to everybody that attended. Everybody was there. They did some great things. Okay, so we'll get into this stuff. Okay, the vision of this economic study was really to reinforce golf as an indispensable asset and vital component of New York's economic, environmental, social fabric, now for future generations. And we really needed to get out there and show people in New York State how valuable an industry this is. Okay, and sorry, let me just go here. Okay, and this is why. Because we needed to address flashpoints and legislative demands. Hot button topics that pop up, right? Okay, thank God this guy didn't become mayor. Who was this, Land, I think? Yeah, Brad Landon. Brad Landon wanted to, what did he want to do? He wanted to shut down 4 of the New York City golf courses, one of them being Bend, Portland, which is the oldest public golf course in the country, and he wanted to make it affordable housing, right? And, it's scary There's a report that comes out about how some chemical is affecting Parkinson's disease. And there's absolutely no science behind it yet. But a teacher in the school district picks up on that, and then the kids start writing reports on that. And those reports get written, and the parents come home, and the parents call the golf courses in Scarsdale and ask the golf courses if they're applying that chemical. You know, it's wild, but that's how it works. And those are the things that I think that are important when you go into your communities. And when Andy talks about bringing like the environmental groups in, you have to start bringing the environmental groups in some component. You can't work against them, you have to work with them. You know, that's what I'm trying to do with Huntington Country Club. Cold Spring Harbor is one of the most environmentally sensitive areas on Long Island. And in my 6 weeks there, I've had 2 people call to ask what kind of chemicals I put down on the golf course. It's none of their business. They go online, they go to the New York State DEC website, and they can see every single chemical in New York State that can be applied to the golf course, and they can figure it out on their own. And I don't mean that in the wrong way, but I have to protect the golf course. But what I will do is I'll put apiaries out there, and I'll put data plants out there, and I'll invite some of the environmental groups or high school kids to come in and manage those bee boxes, right? Because that's something that people like to do. And Andy's done a great job at that page. This is the survey response. Okay, 148 economic responded, 154. I think there's 833 golf courses in New York State. We'd like to try and get every one of them, but we only have so much money, you can only have so many people. But this is a very good representation of New York State. You know, you have the Long Island metropolitan area, heavily populated. You go up into the Albany area, you get up to Buffalo, Rochester. You know, you have some up in the Adirondacks, but it's a very good representation. So we have a lot of good data points to pull from. Okay. New York golf is a reflection of the Empire State's character, bringing strength, innovation, community, and connection to the land. And this is something that's very important, and I think this is what defines New York golf from an economic and an environmental and a community standpoint. The legislators are quick to talk about, you know, clean air, you know, clean water, clean for the kids, for the population. Well, so are we. You know, we're the same way. But we also provide a tremendous amount of leisure, a tremendous amount of, you know, activity and health. And I think it was best demonstrated during COVID. You know, I mean, golf was one of the only things that wasn't shut down. So I think that's important, you know, that we are part of that conversation, that we are not looked at on the outside as this big bad wolf that's taking up green space, because we are green space, you know, and then using things. And the economics are the driver. Okay, $12.9 billion economic engine. That's how much revenue, that's how much is driven through New York State every year for golf. That's a huge number. When I put that number into ChatGPT to compare it to other numbers, that number was huge. Like tourism in New York State, $31 billion. Okay, I think that like performing arts was like the largest, but $12.9 billion is a big number. It's the fastest combined impact of iconic New York industries, including horse racing, craft beverages, and Yankee home games. So it's big. And it's significant, and it gets brushed under the rug. Okay. Yeah. Okay. $3.8 billion in wages, $89,000 jobs, and a $6.9 billion direct impact, $1 billion in taxes. And we know that legislators love taxes, the government loves taxes. So, you know, and they want, what do they want to do? A couple years ago, they wanted to put tax golf courses in New York State, right? You know? And I mean, this is not a condemnation of anybody outside of the golf course industry, because a lot of the times we operate behind the scenes, but a bill comes out to tax private golf courses, right? To tax, I think they need to tax every golf course. I don't know, I really get into it much. But right away, there's a media Meadowbrook, and there's a legislator there, and there's thousands of dollars raised for that bill to sign that bill. And so that bill gets shot down. But then we have these environmental bills that come out, and it's the Superintendent's Association solo upstate that are fighting the bills in Albany, right? And so a bill like UNIC comes out, and you think to yourself, well, what does that really mean? Like, this chemical got banned. Well, it means instead of $10,000 to spray for grubs and kill your golf course, you're spending $25,000 a year. So there is an economic impact. It's just buried in your operational budget. But then when you go to the superintendent, you ask why the operational budget's larger. You figure that out. Health and wellness, I mean, it was nobody demonstrated during COVID. 5 miles of walking, 2 to 3 miles of walking still You know, it's great. You know, you get outdoors, you play, and there's something about it that does something good to balance it out. There's 833 golf courses in New York State, 742 facilities, 534 public, 153 municipal, that's fourth in the nation. 63% of the golf courses in New York State are less than $50 to go play. My dad lives upstate Rochester, New York, and he will drive 25 miles to go play golf for $25 versus 5 miles to go play for $35. And I'm like, Dad, don't you realize the gas? And he's like, yeah, but you know, I'm saving the $10. You know, I mean, you know, when you go upstate, you know, we live down here, right? But still, golfers around here. I have buddies, right? They go out to Swan Lake, right? For example, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Swan Lake, by the way, or any of these clubs. But they look at price and they look at cost. You know, they balance between them. I was at Harbor Links. People always complain about the cost of Harbor Links, right? I think Harbor Links is a pretty good club to play, but they keep it in nice shape. And so I think that number is an important number there. That less than $50. And that's something that we need to continue to pound home to legislators because that is an affordable number. When you go to Topgolf and you play Topgolf, I take my kids to Topgolf. Topgolf is like going to New York Yankee game. You know, I pay for the tickets and then I pay for the food and I walk out of there and it's $400 for me and 3 kids. And I'm like, you kidding me? Like, I don't know. I'm spoiled because I take my kids to the Huntington Country Club to play for free, which is nice. They just don't like golf. My son likes golf. My daughters don't. They work for me, so that's good. Next slide. Okay. Total New York impacts, there's a lot of numbers on here. Okay. This is a pretty important one, but you can see the economic drivers, golf facility operations, direct impact, total outlook, labor income. You know, it's a pretty good stat. Charities are huge. You know, the thing with charities is, it's amazing to me, is where do most legislators have their charitable events? On golf courses, right? So they come have their fundraisers on a golf course. You know, I tried to look up stats. How many fundraisers New York State legislators have on golf courses? Couldn't find the stat anywhere. I wonder why. You know? I don't know. Just, you've worked in New York State, there's a lot of times. So this just shows the magnitude of the numbers. Tourism, big thing, $3 billion total impact, $1.6 billion direct, 2.1 million trips to New York State per year, you know, for people that want to come play golf. And, I mean, that page is a tourist attraction. You know, people come in here, the first thing they want to do is if they're a golfer, they want to go see that page. I mean, and you can attest to that better than anyone. People from all over the country come, right? They're on the parking lot still, right? To go play the black, you know. And then when they play the black, they see the red, then they want to play the red. You know, because the red's a really good golf course too. The blue's a good golf course. They're all good golf courses. I like the blue with that one. So 19,000 jobs, and that's jobs anywhere from, you know, if you're affiliated with the golf course on the property, you know, that gets lumped in. And a lot of those places, you know, are centered around golf. You know, Turning Stone is a casino, but how many golf courses does Turning Stone have? 3, 5. They're building more golf courses around Turning Stone. You know, so golf is just as important as a casino. You know, I guess people win, they play more golf. If they lose, they might cancel around. This is a thing play. All right. Sharon, will you? Okay, good. Charitable youth measurements. All right, there you go. New York gives back. $267 million a year. That's a direct impact on New York charities and golf courses. 14,000 plus events on golf courses in New York State. That is a large number. I couldn't believe that. And some of these numbers are really, you know, I couldn't believe, but figured that they were going to be pretty strong, and they exceeded expectations. Every course survey in that survey held at least one charitable event in 2023. Those, and some of that's not even lost in there is that a lot of times, like I'll host an event for the police officers, for the firemen. I don't know if that's kind of in there too, but you know, the public service people. You know, they come in and drive the golf course, they do some security for you. It's just unfortunate when you have a break-in, nobody can come figure out who broke in. But it is what it is. Okay. Oh, that's all. All right. This is we get into a little bit of my spiel. Okay, New York Golf Green Space. All right, 103,000 acres of golf course in New York City. 37% water, wetlands, trees, forests, and natives. 2,465 acres designated wetlands. This is on golf courses in New York City. Less than 1 in 5 acres of Long Island. Not sure what that means, but there is a ton of acreage of golf course on Long Island. Perhaps more than anywhere else. I believe it might be more than anywhere else in the country for the amount of space. 38 courses in New York State are Audubon certified. 7% of New York golf courses participate in environmental programs like Audubon STEM, multi-use facilities like birding, tree walking, walk paths, and this is where I give Andy a lot of credit, and Beth Page was ahead of their times with this. Because this is what needs to start to happen. There needs to be outreach to the community. Because we have to understand, like Kevin said, and like I'll reiterate, they say they don't want your golf course until your golf course actually gets threatened. And then when your golf course gets threatened, the community comes out and says, hey, that's where I go to enjoy my Saturday or Sunday. Don't touch my golf course. But there could be some bounce, field trips. I've been in town for Washington. And town for Washington, very environmentally sensitive area. I got working with these environmental groups through this Hempstead Harbor Foundation with oysters. And I was taking my daughter to do oyster cleaning down there. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, we know you. And I was like, yeah, I know you too. And, but we formed a very good partnership. And all of a sudden, they're talking to me about the washdown stations that they're using at Harbor Lakes, and can they go over to see these washdown stations? Anybody have washdown stations in their facilities? Right? Washdown stations do this. They recycle water, so you're not having to continue to use water. They filter the water, so that you're washing your equipment and you're washing your golf carts. Okay, how many of you guys wash your golf carts with just water that comes from the city? Quite a few, right? So I don't know. Has anybody ever put an actual meter on it to see how much water you're actually using? Right. So you're using that water. You're paying for that water. These washdown stations. I mean, right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a tax rebate. If you put a washdown station in, you get a tax rebate to your car. Because those washdown stations are not only recycling water, so they're helping you save water, but they're also taking all the pollutants and everything that's in the equipment and on the golf carts, gas, oil, clippings, right? They're collecting that. It takes a little bit of labor to get rid of it, but it's good for the environment, it saves money. Everybody here wants to save money, wants to maximize profit. And so these programs are great. Field trips, STEM, bringing kids out, when you bring kids out, it's kind of like my big thing is to pay it forward. Like that. There's a theme in the movie, and that's what I say to my members about taking care of the golf course. Pay it forward the next time, preach your ball. Okay, good. New York Golf Ecosystem Services. All right, this is big, okay, and I wanted this in there. You have to understand, 70% of hard surfaces cover Manhattan. New York City is the #1 most impervious city in the country. No surprise. That's why they call it the concrete jungle. One of the top 5 most intense urban heat islands, 7.6 degrees hotter than any surrounding area. What I really wanted to do with this study, what we really wanted to do was we wanted to get with this guy, Ryan Horning from Michigan State. He has such advanced technology that he can actually take an office building and he can actually take the office building away and he can put green space there and he can show you how the green space benefits the city more than the building benefits the city. We just couldn't get it. But eventually we will. Green infrastructure cools cities, provides wildlife habitat, mitigates flooding, filters clean water. I mean, there's all these great things. I mean, I think maybe this is Trump Ferry Point. Awesome golf course, New York City style in the background. It's great. And people like that. People were up in arms. Trump Ferry Point for obvious reasons. Trump Ferry Point still sits there. You come over the bridge, you see this beautiful greenscape. The golf course is not going anywhere. It's a great golf course. I really like it. Water conservation sustainability. Okay, I just have to correct that in line. the aquifer, now you're paying money to desalinize the water. They're very conscious, they're very worried about that on Long Island. And this is something that now we are taking to study, and we're taking to the local level to try and fight, not fight, to work with DEC. And so to work with DEC, we might have to go above them to the legislators. Because you know what DEC tells us in our meetings? DEC tells us, you know what? If you only have 10 million gallons of water to use, and you have 90 acres of turf, you should make it 50 acres of turf. That's not practical, you know? And we're dealing with somebody at the DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. She doesn't play golf, but the guy that's her boss, he plays golf. So we have to, we have to find a way. 70% supply of well. Okay, that well water is a big concern. Okay, the state loves it when we buy water from them. They don't come after homeowners when homeowners run the water, during rainfalls. I mean, I got a guy who still water. I got 3 people on my street. They're still watering the lawn. It's November. I haven't watered the golf course in a month. I don't know. Look at that one. Water is becoming more and more of an issue, especially down here. And one way or another, you're going to have to pay for it. We're trying to work on affluent water. They came out and said to work on affluent water. What's the biggest problem with affluent water? People are worried about affluent water and they're, on the playgrounds, right? Oh my gosh, what's going to be affluent water? It's going to hurt my kids. This is a big one. Golf waste diversion. This is where New York State exceeds around the rest of the country. Okay, waste diversion means how we handle, hazardous materials. Okay, 37% waste diversion rate. Okay, in 2023, and that's a big one. We outperform the U.S. Okay, and this really gets lost in translation, but this will resonate with legislators is how we handle our waste materials and recycle them. Because again, go back to the Community Climate Protection Act: water, air, community. Golf BMPs, 90% of courses use 4 or more BMPs. 75%. BMPs are best management practices. Okay, don't know what they are. Okay, you can look them up. You can just type in New York State Golf Course BMPs or type in golf course BMPs. Is everybody familiar with what BMPs are? Okay, very good. All right, if you're not, you can look them up. Okay, and the biggest thing about BMPs is they will help you save money in your facility. Okay, if you don't I don't know how well you guys are superintendents. Okay. But if you're not using moisture meters, if you're not using soil sensors, okay, you're not using the technology that's now available, not only to help you save resources, but to help you save time, right? I have soil sensors out on the golf course, on greens and fairways, so that after it rains, I know when cars can go out, right? If it hits a certain number, I'm like, well, cars aren't going out this morning, And then I know that can carry over to, I know that it's too wet to put the triplex on the greens, so I'll put the handles on. Right? I know that if it's, at a certain level, I don't have to send the guys out to go check greens, to hand water greens. But when it hits a certain number, I'll get a push notification to my phone that'll tell me it's time to go start checking greens. Right? And that's, this is, how you save money. And it's important. And that's why, I go into Huntington Country Club and they're like, you can cut your staff by 3 people. And I'm like, yeah, if you give me the technology to cut it, and I don't want to cut jobs. But I want to be efficient with how I run the golf course, and I want to put the best product out there. And that's what technology from agriculture into golf has allowed us to be able to do. And these best management practices are a big, important tool. Blowing off your grass clippings, using washdown stations. Okay, the cost up front might be expensive, but the return is big, especially the return when it comes to legislation that can really affect the overall budget. Pesticides, and I don't need to go out about that. You go through this. This is all on the website, so if you want to go to the website, you can look even more into it. That's why some of these slides are in depth. You can't cover them, but you can go on the website and see all this stuff. Okay, nutrient management, norms. Fertilizer logs, equipment calibration, website stuff. This is high level stuff, but it's important stuff. Ask your superintendents, do they write out their fertilizer logs? They have to keep their chemical logs. How do they put the fertilizer out? Do they do soil tests? I just went to a golf course to go over a golf course. I hasn't soil tested in 13 years. We're just putting fertilizer out. I follow the science. Sometimes it needs to look a little bit greener for aesthetic purposes, but I want it brown, firm, hard, fast. We're here for performance. We're balance between performance and aesthetics. And that's the thing too. The state for aesthetics, we're here for competition. All these events come in New York State. We try to generate big money for New York State. It's important. Okay, community, the heart of New York golf. All right. There's a lot on here in terms of what the community does. First, the scholastic golf teams, junior golf, veterans. I mean, fireworks shows. You know, like Andy said, walking trails. I mean, there's so much more than just golf. The golf courses and the grounds provide. Veterans. I mean, we just had veterans taking at our golf course. 120 people came out to play. It was really cool. Bird watching. I mean, all this stuff does start to matter. We laughed at it 5, 6, 7 years ago. When Andy White was presenting himself and other people were presenting it, we laughed at it. And now we're having to embrace it. Okay. Legislative. Okay. Good. I don't do a lot of legislative stuff. All right. This is how it branches out. Okay. Real quick. All right. Right now on Long Island, okay, we have issues with low water permits. They do not give us enough water to use. And these permits are not based on science. These permits are based on when the wells were put in. They said, you know what, we're going to give you 10 million gallons of water back in 1953, and that's enough water for a single row system. Or even golf courses that didn't have water used to take fire trucks out or hoses and water the golf course. And those permits have not been modified correctly. They won't get more water. So some of these permits, like I only have 19 million gallons of water up at Huntington Country Club, and I look at 10 years of reports, and he's been using 20 million gallons of water. And then I go to the U.S. Geological site, and then I go to the USGA site, and it says I should have 26 million gallons of water. I mean, at some point they have to recognize that we don't have enough water and we're not using enough water. I understand the aquifers being overpumped, but golf is pretty important on Long Island. So this is what we're working with. We're starting to branch out. We're going to do a corrective action plan. Okay, with working in a big partnership. At the local level, we're going to work with some key players to demonstrate that we do need the water on New York, on Long Island. This is why we need it. Let's work together. Let's figure out how we're going to get it so that we can protect golf. Because you cannot cut acreage, and you cannot just think you're going to cut golf courses, and that's a solution. There needs to be a balance. So instead of going right to the DEC and fighting with them, we'll do the study, and we'll go to the DEC with the study. We'll ask the DEC for input in the study, and then we'll go to legislators if we have to, because legislators love to have the best golf courses and their members of golf courses. All right, so that's what this is right here. Strategic initiative to amplify our voice of water conservation, advocate for science-based water allotments. Okay, why it matters. All right, 37. We did the first plan. The notice of violations came out 2021, 2022, and guys, another superintendent and myself put together a survey, sent it out. We sent it to somebody, an environmental engineering firm, and they came up with a corrective action plan. DEC said your corrective action plan is not good enough. Said, okay, well, at least it's a stopgap for now. These violations have been sitting there for, any of you guys know if you have violations at your clubs? Okay, well, the violations you probably do. If you're on Long Island, you probably do. And these violations, if you have a well on your property, and these violations are $2,500 a day if you pump over your line. They haven't charged that yet, but they could. They don't know what to do, just like we're trying to figure out how to get more water. This is the process. Okay, we went project management, communication, hired somebody to do it. We go to a survey design. We get industry input. Cornell, DEC, PW Grosso, it's an engineering firm. You draft a plan. You research, you put out a survey, you put it together, you market it, and then you go out and you advocate for it. And so there's a number of steps to get there, funding, it's a lot of stuff, and it's a process. And I'm going to close again, which is good because my time is going on. Okay. If anybody wants to learn more, I'll